Networking and marketing made simple is for you, the business owner that has a product, service, or message that you truly believe in. My name is Scott Aaron, and each week we'll take a behind the scenes look at real world networking and marketing tactics while leveraging LinkedIn to get what you have in front of many more people. Thanks for spending time with me, and let's get started. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Networking and Marketing Made Simple. Super excited for today's episode. Number one, I know you are as well. It's another interview episode. And number two, I have the honor and privilege of talking to another coach, another speaker, another author, but more importantly, another father that focuses on some of the things that I love, which is sales. I've been in sales for over 25 years, and this individual obviously works with sales leaders, sales teams, executives. So we're going to talk about all that and more, and there's not going to be one stone that's left unturned. So let's dive right in. So Casey, welcome today to today's episode. And before we kind of go over all the guts of what you're doing now, I always love rewinding the tape before we actually talk about where we are right now moving into the future, because I feel the backstory is more impactful than the present, because the past really depicts what we're going to be doing. So if you had to rewind your own personal or professional tape of your life and press stop at a moment that you feel was that catalytic moment or impactful moment that kind of set you on this path of what you love doing today, what was that moment for you?
Well, I would think a couple. One was I was 17 years old. This is kind of who Uncle Rico is from Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I got to give love to. So whenever I talk about my college football days or high school football days, I got to give love to Uncle Rico. That's what we do.
Yep.
So 17 years old, I was getting recruited by some Division I schools. Future was bright. Things were looking great. It was like storybook ending. Records are going to be set. Team's going to do this. Last play of the Jamboree my senior year, I break my foot in 4 spots. The guy I beat out my junior year now has to play quarterback for me. He would go on to set single season passing yardage record, take us to state playoffs, first time in 20 years, and get named second team all league. And I had to watch as a captain. Those first 3 games, I was thinking, man, I hope you suck. I hope the world ends. I hope that you feel as shitty as I do. Pardon my French right there. And then something clicked in me, Scott, and I said, this is not how captains act. I went to my coach, asked for help, and I told him how I was feeling and told him about just this negative energy that was just exuding, and I was borderline getting depressed. And all Coach Marty Osborne said is, man, I'm so proud of you. And I was like, did you hear what I just said? Why would you be proud of what I just told you? He goes, because you're here asking for help. And that moment, whenever I went through adversity in sales, because I was a part of the largest deal in my company history, one of the biggest flunks in my company history, probably got too much credit, too much blame. I go back to that moment as a 17-year-old when we all have gaps. We all can get help. We all need support. And I reflect on that moment often. The other moment, I'd say once I got into the corporate world, was a mentor of mine named Jeffrey Neal. And he, remember I told him I had an income goal. It was after the first time I won number 1 at our previous company. And he said, hey, what's next? I said, I just want to enjoy the night, because we were at like kind of this little awards dinner. And he goes, well, what's next? And I'm like, well, I want to do this. And he's like, what's this? I'm like, well, I want to achieve that. And he's like, all right, are you serious? I go, yeah. And deep down I was like, uh-oh, what did I just commit to? And that moment, he followed up me on Monday, and I learned about the power of visualization. I got retaught the power of visualization, which I learned from my high school football coach, but I literally had this number. It was 155, which was the number of consultants I had to have on billing in the staffing consulting world. If I did that for a straight 52 weeks a year in a revenue cycle, I would achieve this goal. And so I would think, two couple long-winded answers, Scott. Those are the 2 moments that really I think about often, that really have shaped who the person I am today.
Is there something that you can look back on from your sports days, specifically being involved in team sports, which I was? I was basketball, baseball. I was heavily involved in team. And, my son, it's great for him because he's done individual stuff. He's done wrestling, but he's also done team. Was there something that you learned obviously, one of your high school coach being one of your first mentors. Is there something that you really took away from the experience of being a team athlete that allowed you to kind of step into these additional roles, not only being in the corporate world, but then, obviously being on your own and doing all the stuff that you're doing now?
Yeah, I would think two things. One, a quarterback never throws the ball to himself. A quarterback doesn't hike the ball himself. A quarterback doesn't tackle people unless when I throw interceptions, which I threw quite a few of those. Quarterback doesn't kick field goals. So I learned that I'm one of 11. And once I think I'm better than everybody else, I'm not that good. And so I think my parents did an amazing job of teaching humility. I had great coaches who taught me humility. And I never wanted to be the guy that was like, oh, that Jay Cox, what a tool. I wanted to be like, man, that's our quarterback or that's our top performer, but he's nice and he treats people well. Right. That's how we should all act. The second moment I would think it was in college for my college football coach, guy named Bo Baldwin, who's now coaching at Calgary up in the CFL. He said, Casey, if you ever have to tell me how good you are, you're not that good. When you're great, I'll tell you. And yeah, again, I was the number one producer for 10 straight years. I never told anybody about it. I never had to go talk about it, run a report, right? To me, it was always about getting better that next play, that next meeting, that next quarter. It's just like in football. It's like, yeah, at 3rd and 17, I made a 21-yard throw to get a first down. Great, get back in the huddle. Let's go. That's your job. And it wasn't to be like not grateful for those experiences, but it was just like remembering, like, yeah, celebrate, boom. Okay, what's next? And just to stay present in the moment without not getting too high or too low. And I think those are probably two moments that really stand out for me.
I love that. Yeah, and again, I think all of those experiences kind of more or less equipped you for everything that you're doing now. And, sales is one of those things that really triggers some people and motivates others. And when you're talking about sales executives versus sales teams, it's two different demographics there. So you have the sales executive who's managing the sales team. And then you have the sales team, which are obviously the people underneath it that are driving the revenue, driving the goals in the sales. If we were to kind of just compartmentalize the two and put them into one, what do you feel still to this day? Sales has been around for forever. What do you still feel is either the number one, or what are the things that you still feel are holding people back from not achieving the sales goals that they really should be achieving?
Two things. I keep answering two, brother. I hate to, but you're making
Two's
me
better
think.
than one. Two's
There we
better than
go.
one.
Ego is number one. Lack of curiosity is number two. The number of people I worked with over my tent that have a big year and they're like, wow, whatever happened to that person? They were at the awards trip or President's Club trip, but they weren't here this year. It's because they got complacent. Their ego got in the way. They thought they were you know what? Like I'm looking at a sign right here from my man, Ted Lasso. He says, be curious, not judgmental. Walt Whitman quote. Curiosity is a superpower. And at the ripe old age of 48, Scott, I focus on curiosity every single day. I was always curious, but not to this psychotic level. I'm curious now. And I always say selling is not about selling. In my mind, selling is about asking great questions, helping a buyer in their own journey, their own path to help them solve a problem, and they will sell themselves. If you ask the right questions, if you help tell a story where you've helped someone else before, if you're setting expectations and you're present, you're not trying to convince them. Because if there's great discovery and great curiosity, it'll move smooth. And I think where ego gets in the way is whenever a deal gets stuck, which everybody gets a deal stuck. It always happens to everybody. And we have two choices. We can blame the customer, blame someone else, or say, man, I'm going to rewind the tape, maybe evaluate my sales process. What questions did I not ask that I should have asked that made this deal get stuck? And I think once you have that mindset, it's freeing. Because it's just like, okay, well, I have control over this. I'm going to go back and try to figure out what questions I did not ask. And maybe I go ask the customer, hey, tell me, Mr. Miska, is there a question I didn't ask in the last meeting, or is there a question I didn't ask today that would have helped you think more about project A or project B? And I try to do those like uncommon things that I think most sellers don't like to do. As I'm learning, when I left corporate, I thought everybody did this. And as I'm learning now as like a consultant and coach to executives and sales teams, I don't see it a lot there, which is kind of disheartening a little bit.
Yeah, there's two things that kind of stuck out to me going back to our theme of two. Your ego can become your greatest overhead. That's number one. And number two is questions lead to answers. And that's the big thing, is that when you ask the right questions, you're going to get the right answers. So for me, yes, I'm a teacher. Yes, I'm a coach. Yes, I'm a consultant, but I'm also a student. I'm a student of the game. I love reading. I love getting into the mindset and under the hood of other people. Was there a specific book in your journey that acted as kind of like the jumping off point for you, where it kind of opened up new avenues, doors, windows in your brain about sales and how you specifically should be looking at them and how others should be looking at it as well?
I'm gonna go theme of two, baby. We're gonna keep this thing rolling. A couple ones. I love Patrick Lencioni's work. He wrote a book called Getting Naked, which I would not encourage people to research that in their corporate Google form. You might get in trouble. So maybe search that one at home. And joking aside, but like Getting Naked is about humility and vulnerability. And I've been talking about those skills for a while, just getting more to myself, or sometimes when I would say the word vulnerability in my old corporate job, people are like, what are you talking about? And then when Brene Brown started talking about it, I was like, wow, she's onto something. And I ate up all that stuff. And one of my first financial advisors, he told me about it. He's like, Jay Cox, this character is like you. Like I feel like you're the. I'm like, I was humbled by his comment, and I read it, and it really just talked about, being humble and vulnerable, like not being afraid to say what you don't know, not being afraid to ask questions. The other one's an old timer that I actually read in college, and I was just too immature to really understand it. And then I listened to it in my mid 30s, which is Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And I swear, listening to it, the narrated, was like one of the most deepest growth moments of my life. And if you've not done it, I would highly encourage everybody to do it, because his storytelling and the way he communicates is off the charts.
Yeah, I listen, I always love book recommendations because my wife and I run a high level mastermind called Expert Authority. And as coaches, those people that are looking to help others achieve success in their business, we're big into feedback because we can't predict or assume what people like or don't like. So every quarter we send out a feedback form to our mastermind members saying, what have you loved? What would you like to see change? What would you like to see more of? And a couple of years ago, one of our members in particular, who's still with us after 4 years, suggested, maybe we should do a book club where we can read different books together and start to be all educated on the same topic, every single book that we read. So we're all on the same path together. And we're like, done. We love it. And we got aggressive with it, where we were reading a book a month. I could keep up with that, but a lot of people, again, everyone learns and reads at a different pace and speed and has different commitments. So we've recently switched it to every other month. So we pick 6 books a year. We have 2 months to read it. We talk, once a month at the end of every month, either the halfway point or ending point. And I would say, so two different books that we've recently read. 10x is easier than 2x, is something that we read. And I didn't know what to expect, because whenever I hear 10x, I think Greg Cardone, and I just don't resonate with his business model, his messaging. It just, I'm sure he's a great guy, great father, great husband, but from a business standpoint, just did not resonate. And it has nothing to do with that. When I read this book, it opened up so much for me, to the point where Nancy and I now, so we work 3 days a week. One of the days that we're off, we're actually making it a 10x day, where we talk about what we can do to 10x our business, where she gets 30 minutes, I get 30 minutes, and then we implement together. And in the book, the two co-authors mention a book that they also co-authored together called Who Not How, which is what we're reading right now. I finished it yesterday on the plane, 170 pages. You can finish a couple days, but it talks about, in business, it's not the how that gets you to where you want to be, it's the who's. And I'll give you a short example. Michael Jordan, number 2 draft pick, Sam Bowie goes first, Jordan goes second. Obviously we know the history from there, but he came into the league, blew everyone away, averaging 37, 38 points a game, but they sucked, right? because it wasn't so much about how are they going to get to the playoffs and not just get to the playoffs, but win, but who's going to enable them to do it. So there were two specific who's that came into play. First one was in 1988 when they drafted Scottie Pippen. Jordan needed a who. He needed his Robin to his Batman, right? So he got his first who. That got them over the hump, started getting them to the playoffs. They would win the first round, they would lose because they were missing one other who. And that was the mastermind behind how is this team going to get to the next point, and that was Phil Jackson. And it wasn't until those two who's came into play, right? The Scottie Pippen who and the Phil Jackson who, that they then went and won all the championships. And you could say the same thing about when Phil Jackson left Chicago and went to LA, and Kobe and Shaq won 3 championships together, but there there was a who and what conflict the entire time. Meaning, if Shaq and Kobe would have been on the same page about the who and not the what, and the what became, I want the ball. And then Shaq would be like, well, no, I want the ball. And cause the breakup. Who knows how many championships they would have won. Now, Kobe did go on to win 2 more with the Lakers. Shaq went on to win another one, with Miami. But who knows how many championships they would have won if they focused on the who concept and not the what concept. And I just love being able to rewire and just rethink things in different ways. So from that concept, outside of the books that you mentioned, is there a different mindset that a sales professional should have about not just where they are right now, but where they really want to go in the future?
I hate to do it. Can I shameless plug?
Yeah, please.
Because to me, that's so when I have you ever seen Christmas Vacation?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'd be checking your citizenship if you haven't,
Yeah.
right? It's American. You have to read this book. You have to see this movie. When Griswold saw his tree, he's in the forest, and that all of a sudden he goes and it's like lit up. When I was at the 18-year mark or 17-year mark of my corporate career, and I remember I was in Dallas traveling, I was teaching some new people, some new stuff, and trying to get them on board. And they were like the younger brother, not getting it. And I said, guys, how do you win? I expect you to win every deal, but we're not. But how do you win a person when you lose a deal? And they looked at me with a blank stare. And we kind of talked through. I said, think about it. We have to win relationships, not deals. And right when I said that, I was like, that's it. That's the title of the book. And to me, I think as sellers, when we think about winning people, and there's multiple ways to win people, how we show up, what questions we ask, what do we remember, what do we know about their business, what follow-up questions are we asking, what pre-question are we asking, what meeting are we sending a meeting recap, what are we doing to be uncommon? And I learned a lot about what I wrote about, like reinforce it from a guy named John Kaplan, who was a mentor of mine from afar, who is fantastic sales guy. And I've read my book now almost 10 times through the editing process, and I still learn from myself, which means I'm flawed like everybody else. And these are just like Covey, if he read his book, those are time-tested things that are never going to go out of style. Voltaire, French philosopher, way back in the day, he said a man, I'll bring him to date, or a woman, is not judged by his or her answers, but by his or her questions. He was teaching curiosity back in the freaking 1500s, yet we still don't get it. So for me, it's just like if we're relationship focused and less pressure of, I get we got to grow business quarter over quarter. I get we got to hit numbers. I hear you. But if you're doing it the wrong way and burning people out, and just like everybody else, I think it's a recipe for disaster, one man's opinion. And I just think relationship selling is the way to go. And it'll never get replaced by AI, by being nice and doing the right thing.
I could not agree more. So a couple rapid fire questions before we sign off.
Cool.
If you had to pick one thing that makes you different from other coaches and consultants out there that make you stand out, what's that one thing?
I can back up everything I teach. I got years of experience doing it.
Outside of everything that you shared today about, things that you've been done corporate wise, now on your own, what's one random thing that a lot of people don't know about you?
I once did 8 consecutive karaoke songs in a row before the bar guy said, "Hey, maybe we give someone else a turn."
Wow. So yeah, you own the mic. You own the mic.
Remember, it's like Jesus take the wheel. How about
Yeah.
Jesus take the mic?
Final question. I know this is completely random, but
I love them.
I always love knowing like kind of like where people were when they were younger. And I know everyone has a favorite, but what was your favorite sugar cereal growing up?
Oh, I love random questions.
And
I
again,
think I.
the one that maybe your parents necessarily wouldn't let you
Oh
have
yeah,
in the house, but if you went to your buddy's house, you knew it would be there.
I think I'm going Cocoa Krispies. And you got
Oh,
to get
I
it.
was thinking it. You just said it. Here's why. Number one, it's not only good when you start, but it's even better at the end when you can drink the chocolate milk.
That and I think that's where I learned heavy sarcasm coming, Scott. Time kills all deals. If you don't get after those things quickly, then you lose the crunch. And so I would mow those babies down, just like in business. You get time kills all deals, everybody.
Yeah,
Right? Get after it.
love that. All right. So if anyone's looking to connect with you, whether it be on social or find out more about how they can work with you, how you can help them, their sales organizations and teams, what's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I am very active on LinkedIn. My website's Casey Jaycox, so it's CASEYJACOX.com. Like I said, very active on LinkedIn. People can find my book on Amazon. I also host a podcast for dads called the Quarterback Dadcast. Episodes come out every Thursday. And if you're a dad listening, you can find those fine episodes wherever you consume your podcasts. But I do love connecting people who reach out. I will get back to you.
Yeah.
And I also would just ask, if you do reach out, please let me know where you heard about me, hopefully from this podcast, so I can come back to you, Scott, and say, hey, we're growing listeners for you, brother.
Awesome. Well, and that's, we talked about it in the pre-show. It's all about creation and collaboration over competition and comparison. It's never going to get us where we want to be. So, Casey, final question before we sign off. What does success truly mean to you?
Success means, I think, doing something where your heart is in it at every moment. You're present. Success isn't just about finance. Success is about fulfillment and serving others. And I think when I'm at peace with, like, I'm the best dad, best husband, best father, to me, that's what success is about.
Love it. Now, Casey, just want to thank you again for your transparency, your honesty, and all of the wisdom that you brought to today's episode. And for anyone that's listening, anything that Casey mentioned, whether it be about his book, his podcast, how to connect with him, you're not going to have to look far. It's going to be in the show notes. It's going to be in the email description. It's going to be everywhere. So I invite you, if this really spoke to you, whether from the father aspect or the sales or business aspect, do reach out to him. I highly recommend him and highly advise you to do so. So, Casey, thank you again for being here today.
Grateful for your time.
So again, guys, continue to support the podcast. You know what we're doing. We're on our way to 1 million listens and beyond. Grateful for any ratings and reviews, but more importantly, any feedback that you have for us of what we can do to continue to make this podcast the best one possible. So everyone, thank you again for tuning in today. Love and gratitude, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you could, please support this podcast by hopping over to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or any place that you're listening to this. Leave us a rating and review. Let us know what you loved most and what you would like to hear more of. But also, if you would like to learn how to take your business to the next level, whether it's using LinkedIn or working directly with myself and Nancy in our intimate group coaching programs, you can head over to www.thetimetogrow.com or scottaaron.net to learn more. Thank you again for your support, love and gratitude, and I'll talk to you soon.